You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot to get to today. A few football stories, a baseball story, a couple college basketball stories, and after that, an exclusive interview that I did with Wayne Stewart. He's the author of Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, the colorful characters of baseball. Admittedly, I should have sold that yesterday in the outro. I do not do a good job with intros and outros. Once I get going, I'm really good, but when I have to sign off, oh man, I'm just not good at it. That's pretty bad. That is something I should be better at. I'm working on it. I know what my issues are, and I know that I need to correct them. But regardless, that interview will air after I talk about Illinois OSU. Should be a good game tonight. I gotta tell you, before I get into the NFL trade, we all know what I'm going to start with. I gotta tell you, I have a bunch of interviews lined up for this month. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they are some very, very smart people. Some very highly coveted interviews that I was able to get. And I'm telling you what, the Jacob Valk Show is hitting its stride right now. And you're definitely going to want to subscribe. Whether you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, whatever, you're definitely going to want to subscribe so you don't miss anything. I never do this, I never do these crazy plugs, but I'm telling you, I'm hitting my stride over here, and you're definitely not going to want to miss anything. Okay, on to the NFL trade. Russell Okung for Trey Turner. As it stands right now, those are the only two pieces in this deal. I saw some reports saying that this is going to be straight up. I'd be really surprised if that was the case, because the Panthers would be crazy to do this straight up. Absolutely crazy. I understand they're tanking for Trevor. I think that's what we're calling it. Tanking for Trevor. But don't you want to at least see if Will Grier is your guy? See, this is what I don't like about tanking in the NFL. You have these young quarterbacks, give them a chance. Kyle Allen, alright, fine, he had a good run early last year, he kind of got figured out. He's not the answer. Will Grier, the jury's still out on. You cannot say with confidence that Will Grier is not going to work out in the NFL. And the same thing with the Miami Dolphins. How are you going to throw Josh Rosen into that situation and expect him to put up good numbers? The guy was set up to fail. He's not Ryan Fitzpatrick. He doesn't have that experience. Of course Fitzpatrick is going to do better than Rosen. Of course. That's why it made no sense for the Dolphins to trade for Rosen. We all knew that they were tanking for Tua. Why would you trade for a young quarterback? You're setting him up to fail. It makes no sense. The Panthers are setting up Will Grier to fail here. Now, I don't want to hype up Will Grier like he's the second coming of Jake Delhomme, but give him a chance. That's all I want. Did Grier look good in his 2 starts? Absolutely not. He looked atrocious. I understand that. And there's a really good chance that Will Grier is not going to be a good starting NFL quarterback. But give him the chance. You can't give him just 2 starts at the end of the year and say, that's it. Especially when you have no other option. It's unfortunate that the NFL is getting to this point. This used to be just an NBA issue. Now it's an NFL issue. Teams tanking before the season. Now it's infecting the NFL? I mean, you've got to be kidding me! The NFL is the only sport that you really shouldn't be able to do that because there's no minor league system. I understand basketball really doesn't have a minor leagues, but the G League, some teams use it that way, some teams don't. It's getting more and more to the point of a minor league system. That's not the issue. The issue is that tanking is infecting the NFL. Roger Goodell needs to do something quickly. The only way that this trade makes sense for the Panthers is if they're getting a better pick out of it. I don't know what picks those would be. I mean, they're not getting a first. They're not getting a second. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the Panthers are getting out of this trade to make it worth their while. Hell, at this point, if you're really tanking, trade McCaffrey. Look, I understand that the Panthers are over a barrel here with Luke Kuechly and Dontari Poe and James Bradbury. I understand that. And do they need to find a quarterback of the future? Yes. I don't think it's Will Grier, but you've got to give him the chance. Put a system in place that's conducive for him to succeed. If he doesn't, then you know he's a bust. And if he's going to fail anyway, you're going to get a high pick anyway. What's the point in trying to go 0-16? The Bengals went 2-14 and got the first overall pick. It may not seem like a huge difference, but there is a difference between 0-16 and 2-14. There's a difference between 0-16 and 1-15. You don't want to be mentioned in the same breath as the 08 Lions and the 17 Browns? And John McKay's Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I mean, come on! That's what the Panthers are trying to do here. They're trying to go 0-16. And I can't support it. The only way that I will support this trade for the Panthers is if they get better picks out of it. If they get better picks out of it, okay, I can understand this trade. And hopefully they will. I think they will. I'd be really surprised if this was a 1-for-1 swap. But as it stands right now, that's all we know about this trade. The Chargers easily win it. They're setting up Justin Herbert pretty well here. See, they know how to build around a quarterback. You can't just draft a quarterback and immediately think that things are going to change overnight. You have to put a system around him for him to succeed. It doesn't matter if it's Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Tom Brady. He still needs a system in place that's conducive to his success. And that starts with good coaching. That starts with a good offensive line, good offensive playmakers. The Panthers aren't doing that. It's going to be a long season, Panthers fans. Enjoy going 0-16. Moving on now to Jimmy Graham. And it seems like he's going to be cut. He's not going to get to finish out his contract with the Packers. He's going to be a free agent. And I can't say I blame the Packers for doing this. Graham looks like a shell of his former self. He did not have a good year last year. He really hasn't had a good couple seasons in Green Bay. For whatever reason, him and Aaron Rodgers, it just seemed like they couldn't get going. I don't know what it was. I thought it could have worked. I remember when he was a free agent, I wanted the Jets to go after him. I'm kind of glad they didn't, but it should have worked with him in Green Bay. I don't know why it didn't. You get the sense that Graham is just at the end of his career. He'll probably retire. Maybe he'll try to latch on to another team and get his first Super Bowl. But he's going to be a backup if he signs with another team. I understand that he had a good playoffs last year, but you really can't trust him with anything more than a backup role. You want to put him in a Jason Witten type role? I don't mind that. Ultimately, though, I think Graham should retire. He's had a really good career. He was one of the best tight ends in the NFL at one point. I remember in 2013 when he caught a touchdown a game. He was unreal. Ride off into the sunset. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Don't be a hanger-on. Keep your head clear. You seem to have gotten out of the NFL without any major injury concerns, thank God. I would just retire if I was Jimmy Graham. Moving on now to Jason Peters, and it seems like the Eagles are going to let him finish his career somewhere else. Not too many people remember that he is not a lifetime Eagle, so it's better from that end. He started his career with Buffalo, then he ended up with the Eagles, and went on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, though. I can make the argument for it. I can make the argument against it. 9-time Pro Bowler in 16 seasons. But when you ever watched Peters play, did you really think you were watching a Hall of Famer? When I say the name Jason Peters to you, do you immediately think Hall of Fame? Maybe Eagles fans do, but I don't think non-Eagles fans do. Look, Peters can still play. There's no question about it. According to Pro Football Focus, last year, he had an 83.4 overall grade. I understand that in the NFL, you always want to get younger. But if the guy can still play, what's the harm in bringing him back and just drafting his heir apparent? Carson Wentz is not exactly the most durable quarterback out there. You really want to get rid of one of his linemen when he can still play? I hope you can sign a replacement or draft a replacement. The Eagles' offensive line is one of the best in football. You don't want to lose that. Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, Peters, Jason Kelsey, Isaac Seumalo, or Sumalo, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. One of the best O-lines in football. You don't want to lose that. Now look, this draft is stacked with offensive linemen. We all know that. Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, and there's a fourth guy that I'm forgetting. Jedrick Willis. Jedrick Willis. Yeah, the Alabama guy. Alright, that was gonna kill me. Can you draft a replacement for Peters? Yeah, you can. I don't think you'll lose much, but I'd rather they draft someone in the second or third round and have him learn behind Peters, have him learn behind Doug Peterson, who gets a really bum rap. There were people calling for Doug Peterson's head last year. How are you going to fire Doug Peterson? Look at what he's done with the Eagles. You're forgetting that he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles? I'd rather the Eagles bring Peters back and have a day 2 draft pick invested in an offensive tackle. I don't hate the idea of them using their first rounder on an offensive tackle, though. I don't hate this move for the Eagles, but I don't love it either. I'd be interested to hear what you think about Jason Peters as a Hall of Famer, though. Tweet at me, @RealJacobValk. I don't think he is. I can make the case for it, though. It's an interesting one. Alright, the baseball story that I want to talk about is really minor. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It's the Red Sox signing Colin McHugh to a deal that guarantees him $600,000, but it can go up by a little over $3.5 million, depending on how many innings he pitches, and he has some roster bonuses in there. It's a good move by the Red Sox to bring McHugh in. He does have past success as a starter. We all know that Chris Sale is still hurt. He was actually diagnosed with a flexor strain today, so he's been shut down. He is not going to get Tommy John surgery as of right now, but the Red Sox needed some reinforcements in that rotation. Bringing McHugh in makes a ton of sense. I gotta say, I'm a little surprised the Yankees didn't do it, to be honest with you. You know, while I'm on the subject of the Yankees, my friend Mark asked me if I'm concerned about Judge. On a scale of 1 to 100, 1 being not at all, 100 being we're gonna lose for the next 20 years, I'm at a 10. Look, it stinks that Judge can't stay healthy. You don't need me to tell you how dominant Aaron Judge is. I mean, the guy's the future captain of the Yankees. If he can put together a couple seasons where he's not hurt, they're going to make him captain. No question. They're already marketing him more than they ever marketed Jeter. I'm a little concerned that they haven't figured out exactly what's wrong with him. You know, this is something that was supposedly fixed with bringing in Eric Cressy and overhauling the training staff and the development staff and all that good stuff. It doesn't seem like it's changed at all. I don't know what the reason is for all these injuries. But I do think the Yankees are going to be able to weather the storm here. Look at the AL East. Who's beating them? Orioles, no. Blue Jays, not yet. In a couple years, maybe, but not this year. Red Sox, definitely not. They just traded their best player. You tell me they're going to overtake the Yankees? Yeah, right. And the Rays, absolutely not. It's still the Yankees' division to lose. They're just not going to run away with it. Will they have to play meaningful baseball in September? Yeah, maybe. You know what? I don't care. As long as they win the division, finish with the best record in the American League, which I still think is a possibility, and win the pennant, this is a successful season. The World Series? Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. As it stands right now, I'm picking the Dodgers, but there's no reason to think that things could break the Yankees' way in October. A million things can happen over the course of a 162-game season. Maybe the Yankees swing a blockbuster trade. Maybe the Dodgers get bitten by the injury bug. Maybe the Yankees stop getting bitten by the injury bug. A million things can happen. I'm really not worried about the Yankees. Moving on now to Villanova Seton Hall, and this may have been a Game of the Year candidate. This was a back-and-forth affair. Villanova tried to pull away at some points, but Seton Hall kept fighting back. I'll tell you what, I was locked into this game. I was locked into this game more than I've been locked into a college basketball game in a long time. Since Kansas-Baylor. And before that, since the 2 games that I went to at the Garden to start the year. This was a great win for Villanova. All 5 of their starters played really well. The thing that I'm not crazy about with this from Nova's end is they played all their guys a lot. Samuels, 38 minutes. Bay, 38 minutes. Robinson Earl played the whole game. Gillespie, 35 minutes. Moore, 37 minutes. There's a chance, a small one, because Jay Wright's a smart guy, great coach, but there's a chance that these guys will be exhausted by the time the tournament rolls around. Now, I know these guys are young kids and they're in good shape. We're not in Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Love territory where we've got to worry about the back ends of back-to-backs to get them through the whole year. And I know that college basketball doesn't have back-to-backs anyway, but it would just concern me a little bit if I was a Nova fan that these guys got run ragged this much. And the fact that you needed them to win this game. I mean, look, I knew this was going to be a close game. It killed me to pick Seton Hall. It was really tough. It didn't surprise me at all that Villanova won. And this is a game that Nova can hang their hat on and feel really happy about for a while. I mean, they won the Big East with this win. The Big East this year has been a great conference. And now they get to end the season at Georgetown? Doesn't get much better than that for Nova. Seton Hall, though, had every opportunity to win this game. And I'm going to tell you why they didn't. The one guy that I singled out from Seton Hall yesterday was Myles Powell. We all know how good Mamukelashvili and McKnight are. Myles Powell is great. And I picked Seton Hall because they were home and they had the best player in this game. But Powell didn't act like it. He shot 5 for 18 from the field, 3 for 10 from beyond the arc. He has to be better than that. Are Mamukelashvili and McKnight good enough to step up and you expect to win? Yeah, they're really good players, but Powell's great. And Seton Hall has a much better chance of winning when their best player acts like it. I'm sure that when Powell's head hit the pillow last night, he was tossing and turning. I'm sure he had a tough time getting to bed last night. I'm sure he felt bad about it. And Seton Hall has a tough game coming up against Creighton. This isn't what you want heading into the conference tournament. You want confidence. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. Does Seton Hall have anything to be embarrassed about here? No. They played really well. They certainly played well enough to win. Their defense wasn't that great. Powell didn't step up, but Mamukelashvili did. He was probably the best player on the floor last night for both teams. And Quincy McKnight played well. Willard just needs to get Powell's head on straight. He can't afford another game like this. Moving on to Illinois versus OSU. And this is a battle of 2 very similar teams. They both look to grind you out and win 66-64 games. They are not going to shoot the lights out. They're going to look to grind you out defensively. OSU is a better defensive team, but don't take anything away from Illinois. Kofi Cockburn is one of the best shot blockers in the nation. And he's putting up 13.5 points a game. one of the most underrated big men in the nation. And he's a freshman. He's only getting better. I think he's going to be a future lottery pick. Don't come out this year. Please. Stay in school, get better, and you've got a really bright future on your hands. Ayo Dosunmu is their best player, though. He's putting up 16.5 points a game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Very efficient with shooting. He's not a good three-point shooter, but he's shooting 48% from the field. Really, really good player. And Andres Feliz is another good player, putting up 11 points a game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. They also have a couple players in Trent Frazier and Alan Griffin that have shown flashes of greatness, but aren't there yet. Brad Underwood did a really good job at Stephen F. Austin, and in his 1 year at Oklahoma State, he did really well. It's taken him a while to get going at Illinois, but he's finally hit his stride, and I think Illinois is set up really well for the future. The only senior that I mentioned is Feliz. If I had to pick a sleeper team to win next year, the whole thing, it may be Illinois. But when you look at OSU, they're just the better team. They have the better player in Caleb Wesson. They have the better coach in Chris Holtmann. They have the better defense. Wesson and C.J. Walker are really, really good defensively. And Luther Muhammad's no slouch either. And they have another scorer in Dwayne Washington Jr. The big thing in this game for OSU is going to be injuries. DJ Carton and Kyle Young are game-time decisions. That's huge for the Buckeyes. Carton is dealing with some mental health issues. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that at all. I commend him for taking time off and getting himself sorted out. But the simple fact is, it's just a huge loss for the Buckeyes if he's not playing. And Kyle Young is doubtful for this game, according to John Rothstein of CBS Sports. Doubtful doesn't mean out, though, so if you want to call him a game-time decision, you can. I'm sure he's going to try to push through it. He's a tough kid. This has actually given Washington an opportunity to step up and show what he can do. I'd love for Holtmann to find a way to keep Washington in the starting lineup when Carton and Young come back. All in all, even though OSU is home and they have the better player in Caleb Wesson, I think the absences of Carton and Young are going to hurt them too much. I think Illinois wins this game by about 7 points. Alright, here's my interview with Wayne Stewart. You are listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm fortunate enough right now to be talking to Wayne Stewart, the author of Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, the colorful characters of baseball. In addition to that, he also has a couple other books that you should check out in Name That Ballplayer, the ultimate baseball quiz book, and 1960, when the Pittsburgh Pirates had him all the way. Wayne, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Good to be with you.
All right, my pleasure. So we'll focus on Wits, Flakes, and Clowns for this interview. Maybe down the line I'll interview you about your Pirates book. It'll be painful for me to talk about it since I'm a Yankee fan, but I'll power through it. But going back to Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, what can you tell us about Bert Blyleven?
Oh, geez, there's so much to talk about. And, the funny thing, too, getting back to the Pirates for just a second, is this is the 60th anniversary of that the event. So, we'll muddle through it, even though, you're a Yankee fan. But,
I still haven't forgiven Hrabosky.
I guess I can't blame you, yeah. Well, Blyleven, first of all, had what had to be one of the greatest curveballs ever. I mean, in the book, I call it like Dead Man's Curve because the victims of his curveball were just, baffled. But he was a very playful guy, too. Some of the stuff I maybe shouldn't discuss because he turns out to be a fan of flatulence and had a machine that could imitate that noise. So I'll skip that. But, Frank's comes to mind, and I guess let it go at that.
I actually had a shirt of his that said, "I love farts" on it, and he signed it for me. I had it hanging up in my room for a long time.
Then you know what I'm talking about. Briefly, one time Tom Grier, who's been an announcer with the Rangers for years, told me that he and somebody else, another teammate, went to a movie in the afternoon, off day or whatever, and then they heard these noises coming from across the theater, and they said, "I guarantee you Blyleven's here." And when they left the theater, sure enough, he was the cause of the noise.
All right. So can you lay out the craziness of Dizzy Dean?
Yeah, I sure can. Dizzy Dean was the kind of guy who was, aside from being kind of couple, kind of a clown, he was cocky too, and very confident of himself. I remember one time reading about an opposing batter was taking his time digging in at the batter's box. He was getting his cleats and just digging a good foothold for himself, and that's kind of a breach of etiquette, at least as far as Dean was concerned. So after the guy settled in, Dean kind of erupted. He said, "Are you all done?" He said, "You comfortable? Well, send for the groundskeeper and get a shovel, because that's where they're going to bury you, and you can guess where the next pitch went." Yeah. Another time, a similar story, he faced a rookie, and he peered down at him off the mound for a little bit, and then finally he says to the kid, he said, "Son, what kind of pitch would you like to miss?" So he was cocky and confident, yeah.
Oh, man, we need more of that in today's game, I'm telling you.
So, we do.
No question. I mean, we talk about hitters showing pitchers up. What about pitchers showing the hitters up? I mean, I think that's good for the game. I really do.
Well, I talked to Jesse Roscoe, so you can tell that's been some time. And this was back when Jeffrey Leonard and some of these guys were really starting to get demonstrative. And, I asked him, why don't you pitchers get mad? Why don't you? And he said, aside from Eckersley, and he felt Eckersley had earned the right to be flamboyant, like aiming his finger at a strikeout victim. But by and large, I think you're absolutely right.
All right. Sounds good. More people need to say that I'm right.
Yeah.
So would you be able to describe the zaniness of the mad Hungarian Al Hrabosky?
Well, sure. It's funny that in this book, because it does have the title of Wits, it does include some guys who are more, not hilarious, but they're clever. Witty guys like Andy Van Slyke. His lines don't make you laugh out loud, but he's very clever. Then you have guys like Mo Hrabosky, who was a supreme practical jokester. And some of the guys were just, I guess you could say off the wall. And one of those would be probably Jimmy Pearsall. Now, I don't think anybody's going to say, that Hrabosky was hilarious or anything, but he had his ways about him. You probably remember how he would glare at an opposing batter, and then he oftentimes storm off the mound and head towards second base a little bit and get the ball and just, fart into his glove. Well, one time he missed the glove, and it, flew across toward the third baseman, and Hrabosky wasn't about to be intimidated or embarrassed and pick it up, so it was almost a case of who's going to pick up this baseball, but definitely a mind game with him. I remember the time he didn't so much say it as he snorted that a manager said, "You're going to have to shave off his Fu Manchu that he had," and he said, "How can I intimidate batters if I look like a swear word golf pro?" And, to him it was like, almost like you were asking him to be Samson to his Delilah. He's not going to shave, yeah.
What about that experience that he had with Bob Engel?
Let me see if I can remember that one, because people don't realize, a lot of times, but I wrote this book quite some time ago. Which one were you thinking of?
That was the one where he threw the ball back to Engel, and Engel threw the ball back over his shoulder, and then eventually Engel forgot balls and strikes, and they had to check with the official scorer to see what balls and strikes actually there were on the count. And it was funny, Engel's line to Hrabosky was, Al, there were so many balls on the field. How am I supposed to keep them straight?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Was that the same time where... No, that's a little different. I was thinking of the time Hrabosky got a baseball he didn't like. He didn't like the way the seams felt, and so he throws it to the home plate umpire. Remember that one?
Yeah, and I think that was Engel. I think it was.
Okay. Yeah, and eventually the umpire got so ticked off at Hrabosky, he threw baseball after baseball out to the mound, like, you pick the one you like, yeah. That was
Talking to Wayne Stewart, the author of Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, The Colorful Characters of Baseball. In addition to that, he also has a couple other books that you should check out in Name That Ballplayer, The Ultimate Baseball Quiz Book, and 1960, when the Pittsburgh Pirates had him all the way. So, what can you tell us about Bill Spaceman Lee?
Oh, another one. You don't get a nickname like that without something going on. I'm trying to think which one would be my favorite story about him. Let me think.
You've got a bunch to pick from.
Yeah, and in my book, I tried to cover some of the obvious stories. He sprinkled marijuana on his cereal or whatever, but I also wanted to dig deeper. I did interview about 150 people and came up with profiles, some very brief, on 135 guys. But I tried to dig for stories that weren't that well known. Now, I didn't remember, but it was from his own book, Bill Lee. He was talking about when he was at USC. And he said that after winning the College World Series, one of his teammates drank gasoline directly out of the pump.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he said that he was fine for a while, and then he passed out, and someone commented the guy was wasted, and Lee's comment was, no, he just ran out of gas. So, just crazy stuff.
Yeah, I got to say, Wayne, going back to the interviews that you conducted, there's a sneak preview available on Amazon, and I read the sneak peek, and I was so enthralled by it that I actually bought the book myself. So
right.
I got to say, you did a very good job with this book. I wouldn't be talking to you if you did.
I think it's one of the funniest baseball books ever written because I was able to pull from other people, like maybe a good line from Bob Uecker book, but then I came up with so many other things. I'm very pleased and proud of this book. I appreciate your support.
No, my pleasure. So, can you lay out the silliness of Sparky Lyle?
Oh, sure. Sparky Lyle, this line is one of the obvious ones, but you have to throw it in there. The time that Greg Nettles came up with a line about Lyle, who had won the 77 Cy Young Award, but then the next year they pick a Gossage. Lyle basically loses his job and gets traded, and remember, Nettles says, well, Lyle went from Cy Young to sayonara, but some of the stories that aren't as famous, at least not to me, and I read a lot of baseball stuff, one time Sparky noticed that a teammate of his always had the habit of jumping in the shower, sudsing up, and then he would just reach for his towel quickly to get the soap out of his eyes or whatever, just unfold the towel and quickly dry his face off. So Lyle says, why not? He gets the towel while the guy's showering, smears and slathers some black shoe polish inside the towel, folds it up, and sure enough, the guy reaches mechanically for it and smears that polish all over his face. Yeah. He was good for practical jokes. He knew that Yogi Berra, coaching the Yankees, was infamous for borrowing people's mouthwash or toothpaste or whatever. So Lyle gets the idea very creatively. I'm going to get a syringe and put some of this hot ointment in his tube of toothpaste, and when Yogi borrows it, he's in for a surprise. So, yeah, Lyle was a pretty good prankster.
He certainly sounds it. So, would you be able to describe the wackiness of Tug McGraw?
Sure. To me, when you think of Tug McGraw, I don't know, maybe free association, word association, the first thing I think of is his famous line. I think he had just signed a pretty big bonus, and somebody said, boy, what are you going to do with all that money? You're a young guy. He said, well, 90% I'll spend on good times, women, and Irish whiskey. The other 10% I'll probably waste. I thought that was the class.
Certainly not the most financially sound method, but hey, that's a YOLO moment right there.
Yeah.
Talking of Wayne Stewart, the author of Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, the colorful characters of baseball. In addition to that, he also has a couple other books that you should check out in Name That Ballplayer, the Ultimate Baseball Quiz Book, and 1960, when the Pittsburgh Pirates had him all the way. We've obviously spoken about Wits. We spoke a little bit about 1960. I got to ask you, Wayne, do you have a good baseball trivia question for me?
Yeah, the tricky part there is, what degree of difficulty. And by the way, let me say real quick, the 1960 Pirate books is only available on Amazon.
Okay.
Normally the others are Barnes & Noble anywhere. Well, I remember a friend of mine asked me, and this was probably 15, 20 years ago, that who was the last American League switch hitter to win the MVP? And it's a trick question, which I normally don't like, because the answer was Vida Blue, if I recall my details.
Oh, boy.
Those are kind of tricky. But in that book, Name That Ballplayer, basically 3 levels of clues are given to the reader. And you can pretend like if you get it right on the first clue, you've hit a home run because you didn't have much to go on, but you hit it out of the park. The second one, you get it right, you got a double. Third one, a single. So typically there would be something like this man was from the same hometown as Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr., born, in fact, on the same date as Jr. Then the next question, which would help a little bit more, is both he and Jr. are Hall of Famers and among the all-time greats. And then the third clue might be a giveaway, like his nickname was the Man. So, it kind of works like that for that book, Name That Ballplayer.
All right, sounds good. I'll keep an eye out for it. So let's get back to Wits, Flakes, and Clowns. What can you tell us about Fritz Peterson?
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, the same thing. It's almost like word association. When you think of him, you either think of his, scandal there, with Mike Kekich.
Yeah.
Or you think of some of the pranks, because he did some gems. Back in 1975, Dwayne Kuiper was with Fritz Peterson when they were both with the Indians. Now, in spring training, the players, of course, are given things from the clubhouse man. They would be given, they'd shine their shoes for them. They'd give them gum, cigarettes, or whatever they wanted. And then at the end of the week, the clubhouse man would leave a bill. Now, back then, the bill was very small compared to nowadays, for example. Kuiper told me that it might be $30. And they would leave this bill on a player's chair. Now, Fritz Peterson grabs the opportunity to trick a rookie. He takes the bill, when the rookie's not looking, of course, and in front of the $30, he sneaks in a 1. So now the rookie gets the bill and thinks he owes $130, which for him would have been an enormous sum. So Peterson was always trying to come up with devious things like that, too.
What about White Swap?
Yeah, that's really off on a tangent a little bit, but...
no, it's fair. I'll tell you what, that's what I think of when I think of Fritz Peterson.
Oh, sure. The thing is, and I dug a little bit into this, he swapped everything. The children that went, I think both the families had a dog. They just switched. And then eventually they almost wound up on the same team. They both got traded to, I believe, Texas maybe it was. But I think they missed each other by whatever months or maybe one season. But sure, everybody thinks about swapping an entire family. That was just bizarre.
Now, one of them is still together. Is it Fritz and his wife or Kekich and his wife? Who's still together?
Yeah, I'm not positive. I thought Kekich, but don't quote me.
That's okay. I don't remember either. So we spend enough time on pitchers. Let's move over to hitters. Can you lay out the craziness of Jimmy Pearsall?
Sure. He, more than anything, I would think, craved attention. Like when he ran his 100th home run, ran around the bases in reverse order, third base,
Yeah.
So the one thing about him, he had a legitimate excuse for his very erratic behavior. On a serious note, he did have, bipolar disorder. But anything to get attention. There were times when he'd run to first base, maybe after a walk, I don't know, maybe a grunter, outstretching his arms like a child pretending to be an airplane. There would be Yeah, there was at least one time when he was in the outfield and the bullpen cart, bringing a reliever into the game, passes by him, and he sticks out his thumb as if he were hitchhiking. Yeah, the one I like maybe the best, because there's just so many of these anecdotes for some of these guys. The Yankees were playing Pearsall's, I think maybe the Indians. They had purposely thrown at the heads of two of the teammates of Pearsall right before him in the lineup. Enters the batter's box, he turns around and he kind of mutters to Yogi, he says, "If you guys throw a knockdown pitch at me, you're going to regret it." And he told Yogi, he says, "I can get away with it because I'll claim temporary insanity." Well, Berra got the better of this one. He was unperturbed. He looked back and he says, "You know what? We don't throw at 200 hitters." But Pearsall was much better than that normally, of course. But it just shows you the repartee that goes on with these guys and the humor.
I got to tell you this. I keep score. I'm a Yankee season ticket holder, and I keep score the old-fashioned way with the pen and the scorecard. And sometimes what I'll do is when I'm writing down a home run, I will write down the diamond backwards, and I always refer to it as pulling a Pearsall. So,
that's good.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So, would you be able to describe the zaniness of Andy Van Slyke?
Well, like I said earlier, he wasn't so much zany, but he sure fits in the book because of his wittiness, for example. I remember one time reading about, and he was a joy to interview. A lot of these guys, we were sitting on the bench in the dugout, and then when the field was cleared of all the personnel like the writers, he said, "Just stick around. You're okay. You're with me." So he talked on and on. I think he's kind of proud of his clever lines. And trying to remember the one. He was in a players' meeting, I should say, prior to a game. And Whitey Herzog says, "Well, St. Louis has a new kid. We just brought him up. Anybody here know anything about this guy?" And Van Slyke kind of pipes up, "Yeah, I was with him, in winter ball." So Herzog says, "Well, then how should we pitch to him?" Van Slyke says, "Well, I don't know. He was on the disabled list." Just silly stuff like that. And I think Andy Van Slyke, wasn't he the one he reports to a new team that says you can't have facial hair below your lip? That was their rule. And he says, "Does that mean I have to shave my legs?" So that's the kind of guy.
Oh, man. All right, Wayne, you're the best. Thank you for your time.
Oh, no problem. Thanks.
All right, that was Wayne Stewart. He's the author of Wits, Flakes, and Clowns, The Colorful Characters of Baseball. In addition to that, he also has a couple other books that you should check out in Name That Ballplayer, The Ultimate Baseball Quiz Book, and 1960, when the Pittsburgh Pirates had him all the way. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.
What's the matter, Past Jacob? No plug? What did I ever do to you? In all seriousness, I truly hope that you did like the interview. You are going to get more interviews coming up soon. I'm not going to tell you who they are. All I can say is they are very highly coveted people. And I'm really, really looking forward to you hearing them. Tomorrow, I'm going to be breaking down Illinois OSU, along with anything else that breaks in the world of sports. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that if I was a pitching coach, I'd tell my pitchers to just throw strikes. Don't worry about giving up home runs. After all, Babe Ruth is dead.